will cover two projects in which we are currently involved. One of them is called Law Cloud. Law is from local, like local institutions, and the second one is Europeana Cloud. As you can see, both of them have cloud in their name, and that's because the European Commission, under one of the funding programs, puts a lot of pressure on usage of cloud technologies. So these two projects addresses the use of cloud technologies. And the first one in the context of small and very small cultural heritage institutions, the second one in the context of metadata aggregation. Now, before I will start to talk about these two projects, I would like to give you a bit of information about cloud technologies in general. I assume that most of you work in cultural heritage institutions. You have probably heard about cloud and that now everything is in the cloud or everything can be in the cloud regarding information systems. But I would like to have this cloud term a bit more meaningful. So what you can see on this slide is a general architecture of some complex IT system. Looking, let's say, from bottom to the top, at the lowest level we have servers. So you need to have machines which provide data storage, which provide data processing capabilities. If you have information technology system, you need to have a hardware on which this system is running. Then you have some generic platform. This platform can cover things like operating system, database storage, or components which provide some general functionality. So, for example, in many systems you have searching. So very often the searching or indexing and searching functionality is developed as a separate component which can be reused among many systems. The same with authentication. In any system you have users. They have some accounts, passwords, logins, and so on. So you can build, nowadays you can build IT systems by reusing such generic components. So they can be called a platform. And on this platform, you build software, and this software provides some specific functionality. It can be a functionality for collection management systems or any other functionality. At this stage, this blue shape, it represents the system with which your users are interacting. Now, if this is modern and complex IT system, it's probably used over the internet or at least over the local network. So we have this network which provides remote access to such systems. And finally, we have end users which are using their devices, different devices, sometimes web browsers, sometimes mobile applications to interact with your system. So this is overview how architecture of complex IT system can look like. And now what cloud technologies are about. If you want to set up IT system, for example, you want to have your collection management system, you have two options. You can have the complete control and complete responsibility for that system. So you have your own infrastructure. You have your own server room, you have your own servers, you have your own network connection, and so on. But then you need to have a lot of money in the beginning to build all that, to buy the hardware, to have proper rooms to store that, to have fast network connection, and so on. The other option is that you can rent the hardware from some kind of hosting company, commercial company. So you have fewer responsibilities. You do not have to worry about the hardware. You don't have to build your own server room, but then you have also less control. The benefit is that you do not need so money in the beginning, but on the other hand, you pay, let's say, a monthly fee, and it doesn't matter. Usually, it doesn't matter how much your system is used. If you have many users or not many users, if you have many data or not, you just paid for a server or few servers, and each month you have to pay for them. So these are these two classical options, and now the cloud, which can be seen as third maybe a hosting option, but it's much more than just a typical hosting. What is cloud? It's a kind of outsourcing, so also kind of like a hosting of some of your systems somewhere else, somewhere outside, but it has some specific features. So these three most important features you can see on this slide. So cloud technologies or cloud-based hosting is very cheap or should be very cheap. Including very flexible pricing plans. So you do not pay for a machine which is dedicated for you, but you pay for the numbers of hours the machine was really working and processing your data. Or you do not pay for the entire hard drive which is in this machine, but you pay for the number of megabytes or gigabytes or terabytes which you actually store. Because the number of machines, as you can see on this picture, is usually very large, the number of the machines which is used by the company which provides cloud solutions. The idea is that this cloud-based hosting is very fault tolerant. So there is really large number of physical machines, but you are not connected with a physical machine. You are not binded to a physical machine. From your point of view, you have some kind of server, but if the server, but if a physical machine, one of the physical machines goes down, your server is quickly moved to some other machine. This is called virtualization, and it gives, from your point of view, it gives the feeling that your server can run all the year without any problems. Finally, cloud solutions, if properly designed, are scalable, and this includes automated scaling. As I told you about this architecture, it has many layers, and basing on these layers, you can define at least 3 types of clouds. So one type of cloud is called infrastructure as a service. In such case, you need just machines, servers. You want to have control over what's installed on these servers, and you want to set up your own platform, your own software on that. So you decide how many virtual machines you want to have, how big and how fast such machines should be, and for how long you want them, but you deploy the software on these machines. And in such case, the cost model is usually based or on the utilization of hardware, but also on the utilization of connectivity. So how many data you send to these machines, how many data comes back to you, and so on. So this is the most, let's say, the lowest level cloud. Next option is that you want to have or you want to use the platform. So from your point of view, it's not important what kind of machines, how many servers and so on is below. You want to use platform. So you say, okay, I want to build a software, this blue shape, but for this software I need some database, I need some authorization components, I need some searching components and so on. And then you can take from the cloud these 2 bottom layers, and what you are focused on is just the development of specific software. In this case, again, the cost model can be based or on the hardware and connectivity, but also sometimes it's much simpler. And often Google, which also provides such platform as a service cloud, simply estimates the costs just on the amount of data you are interested in, you want to process in this cloud. And finally, something which is, I think, most interesting for cultural heritage institutions, so cloud, where everything is in the cloud. This is cloud called software as a service. So you do not care about servers, you do not care about this middleware platform, you just want to have some kind of software, and you want to use the software, and that's all. This is, I guess, very popular now for example, email, to have a Gmail client. So you do not care about setting up your own email server, you just have email somewhere in the cloud. or probably you use also things like Dropbox, which is a system for storing files, exchanging files, and so on. Again, you do not care about anything. You just, with 3 or 4 clicks and giving your email and choosing some password, you have a feature for, you have an account for storing your files online, and you use the cloud. So the cost model here can depend on the nature of the software. Sometimes this is just some cheap monthly fee. This is especially for services which are used by end users, like, as I said, Dropbox or something like that, where you just pay for an account, or you can use very basic even free account. And for some more complex software systems, the fee often depends on the amount of stored data or on the amount of processed data. You may, for example, have heard about services like DuraCloud. DuraCloud is a company or association from the States which provides long-term preservation services also for cultural heritage institutions. So they provide very large long-term archives, and you can buy such archives as in a software as a service model. So they have some pricing plans. For example, for 1 terabyte per year, you have to pay $1,500. And then you do not care about anything. They guarantee that the data will be safe. You just upload the data to their cloud archive, and the data is stored there. As I said, I wanted to talk about 2 projects. So first, the project called LawCloud. In this project, we want to develop several things which will be based on cloud technologies. And I think one of the most interesting among them will be a platform, a lightweight digital library. It will be addressed not only to libraries, but to cultural heritage institutions in general. The idea is that there are many very small cultural heritage institutions which do not have any IT infrastructure. They have, for example, 1 or 2 rooms, 1 PC, some collection. Let's say that they are able to digitize this collection, but they have no infrastructure to put this data online in any way. They also do not have some knowledge to rent a server, to install the software on some hosted server. So they just need this digital library or digital museum as a service. And the aim of this project, one of the aims of this LawCloud project, is to develop such system, and then to find institutions which will be interested in setting up such service. So, for example, PSNC, as I said, we are providing, one of our activities is aggregation of metadata. But we also would like to provide such service, such digital library as a service thing. So when the software will be developed, we want to set it up for Polish cultural heritage institutions. And maybe if this software will be good quality and well documented, other national or regional or domain aggregators will be also interested in setting up such software. Another example of services which will be developed in LawCloud are so-called microservices for metadata enrichment. Aggregation of data is not just copying of data from one system to another, but the data have to be processed, mapped between different schemas, cleaned up, normalized, and so on. And many of activities which are required in this workflow can be extracted as separate services. And then if, for example, in Hungary, someone will be building one more metadata aggregator, then he will be able to reuse such components again in a software as a service model. So they will be available, and instead of building your own, for example, your own component which will be mapping data from one schema to another, you can reuse such component from the LawCloud cloud. What else? Of course, as a part of this project, also the aggregation infrastructure will be developed in the cloud model. So, for example, the Mint software, as a part of this project, it will be also explored how this software can utilize the cloud technologies. So that's about the LoCloud project. And the eCloud project, this is a very big project, and what I will be showing or describing with this image is just one part of it, but this is the most technical part. So the project focuses on building a Europeana cloud, which should change the way how the data is aggregated. As you could see again on the previous slides, now the data flows from content providers to aggregators and then to Europeana. And the new idea is that there should be some kind of cloud. So, in fact, an IT system located on some servers, but from the point of view of content providers or even aggregators, seen just as a software as a service. So something which runs somewhere and you can simply use it. It should be a place where each content provider can just upload its data and also can download the data back. As you may know, Europeana, when uploading data to Europeana, you have to agree that the data will be published on Creative Commons 0 license. So, for example, we as a Polish aggregator not only would like to upload the data which we aggregate, but we are also very interested in these Polish institutions or data from these Polish institutions which do not use us as an aggregator, but which provide data to Europeana through some other ways. For example, National Library uses the European Library as an aggregator, and it would be very interesting for us to have the possibility to easily download the data from the cloud. Of course, at this stage, we simply cooperate with the National Library, and they give their data to us, and also they give their data to Europeana. But this is like a double effort and duplication of data. If there will be this Europeana cloud, and it should be after the period of the eCloud project, it should be much easier for anyone to build new applications on top of cultural heritage data, because there will be one system which is responsible for storing such data and gives very easy access to that data. So as you can see in this model, Europeana becomes just one of the services. Europeana as a portal becomes just one of the services which is using such data from the cloud and which is also storing the data of the cloud. So more or less this is about these two projects. Both projects, both eCloud and LoCloud, started in the first months of this year, and they will last for 3 years. So you can expect that at the end of 2015 you will have a lot of cloud stuff for cultural heritage institutions. And I hope outcomes of both this project will be very interesting and you will be happy to use it.